Hello again, folks. In our last section, we looked at diversity in the workplace and defining diversity somewhat. And now we're going to take a look at managing diversity and some of the rules and laws that apply to the workplace as far as diversity goes. Incorporating diversity opens up a larger labor pool of skilled workers from which to recruit. Is this true or false? Well, it's true. Diversity is a legal requirement, but it's also an ethical obligation, and it gives you a competitive advantage. So, yes, it's true. Two definitions worth consideration in diversity. Valuing diversity, emphasize training employees of different races and ethnicities, religions, genders, ages, and abilities, so as to function together effectively and cohesively. Again, as a manager, you're going to have to lead a diverse workforce with equal respect and in an ethical manner, treating everyone fairly but firm. Managing diversity emphasizes fully utilizing human resources through organizational actions that meet all employee needs. The role of the manager. Following the four basic components of management is to plan developing programs to promote diversity while organizing, influencing, controlling the implementation, and leading. Diversity training is a learning process designed to raise managers' awareness and develop their competencies to deal with the issues to enable them to manage a diverse workforce. And here's some personal thoughts. People want to be treated like people. They want to be one of the crowd, and they really don't like their differences accentuated. They want to feel like they belong and don't like being recognized as different from the rest. So you want to select the best person for the job regardless of race, gender, religion, whatever the circumstances. It's the best person for the job, not because they're minority or any other reason. There's too much pressure on hiring diversity, so just let it happen naturally. Don't slack off on hiring just because you're trying to get more diverse workforce. Let it flow in normally. Treat everyone equally as a person. Treat them as you would like to be treated. So, barriers for minorities. They generally have a lack of role models. They're limited in their mentoring opportunities. They tend to be excluded from informal networks. There are stereotypes or preconceptions based on race or ethnicity. And there's a perception that the corporate culture favors non-minorities. And then we have the cultural competency, the ability to adapt to a variety of cultural communities. Understanding discrimination's effects, minority employees may resent supervisors who are of a different racial or ethnic background. Why? Because they feel like they're being singled out or they're not being treated fairly. Supervisors have to be sensitive to minority employees who may have experienced some kind of discriminatory treatment previously or who believe they are currently experiencing discrimination. If a minority's employee's resentment interferes with job performance, the supervisor should refer the employee to the Human Resources Department. We need to be appreciating cultural differences. Supervisors' job is to exert special efforts to reduce the differences in the ethnic cultural backgrounds that contribute to any prejudicial attitudes or poor treatment of minority employees. And we have to learn to overcome language difficulties. Employees sponsor English improvement and business English courses for minority employees. And in many parts of the United States, the English language is actually the minority language, and a bilingual person is a valuable asset. In some cases, and some places here in the United States, Spanish is more prevalent than English. We need to be fair in all of our supervisory actions and decisions. If a minority employee complains of harassment or discriminatory treatment by a fellow employee, a supervisor, or some other person, the supervisor must treat that complaint as a priority. Let's take a look at supervising women. The entry of women into many career fields is growing, and we have anti-discrimination laws and affirmative action programs have helped lead women into jobs that were once predominantly dominated by men, such as financiers, scientists, engineers, utility repair specialists, sales and technical people, and so on. Gender diversity for the women, 2 incomes are now normal. There's a disappearance of the traditional family, the mom, dad, and kids. The number of single mothers is increasing, and such, there's an increase in women as a percentage of the workforce. 10 years ago, women made up 49% of the workforce. I'm not sure what it is today, I'll be honest. But still, women's pay continues to lag behind men's. The glass ceiling bears women from upper management, and sexual harassment is still prevalent in the workplace. So we're going to repeat here. What is a glass ceiling? It's the invisible barrier that prevents minorities and women from advancing beyond a certain level in organizations. And to help break that glass ceiling, organizations need to truly value and manage diversity to create equal opportunities for everyone. Should men help break that glass ceiling and promote more women to top management positions? What do you think? Why or why not? We'll leave that thought to you. Do you believe that it's acceptable for people who work together in the workplace to date each other? I don't agree with it because 2 things. 1, it tends to create a bias or favoritism. And 2, when they break up, it creates a situation for conflict. Supervisor reaction to reduce negative reaction to women employees. Inform male workers that women workers will be joining the workforce. And so their presence does not come as a surprise, and therefore we hope that they'll be treated as equals. Disciplinary action will be taken if any female is subjected to abuse or sexual harassment. Sexual harassment is unwelcome sex advances, requests, or conduct when submission to such conduct is tied to the individual's continuing employment or advancement, or unreasonably interferes with job performance, or it creates a work hostile environment. And now, understand, sexual harassment can be male on female, but it also can be female on male, male on male, and female on female. So it's not just a one-way street. Most firms have sexual harassment policy statements, and they also have prevention training programs. But remember, the liability for harassment is on the employer. The employer is liable if sexual harassment of any employees is condoned or overlooked, or fails to lead to some corrective action taken by management. Supervisors should avoid and strongly discourage sexual language, innuendos, and behavior that is inappropriate in the workplace. Sexual stereotyping, that's the use of demeaning language or judgments used usually by men towards women. A supervisor should not make any supervisory decisions based on sexual stereotypes. And we need to have training and development opportunities for women. Offer women employees equal access to training and the development activities that are available to the men also. Encourage those employees with potential to develop their skills. And provide women employees with training and development opportunities focused on enhancing their self-esteem, their communication skills, and their career development path. Now, there are several employee fairness laws. There are the Pregnancy and Family Care Act of 1978 requires pregnancy be treated no differently from illnesses or health disabilities if an employer has a medical benefits or disability plan. Most employers have policies that allow a pregnant employee to work as long as her physician certifies that it is appropriate for her to. These policies also grant the pregnant employee a leave of absence until she is able to return to work or released by her doctor. Family and Medical Leave Act, called FMLA. A woman employee must be granted up to 12 weeks of unpaid leave related to childbirth. Health care coverage must be continued during this period, and the employee must be returned to their former position or a comparable position when they do return to work. It's a law not only for women, in some places it is for men as well. The Equal Pay Act of 1963 requires that men and women performing equal work must receive the same amount of pay. Equitable compensation is a comparable worth. Jobs should be paid at the same level when they require similar skills or abilities. Employees with disabilities, the Rehabilitation Act of 1973, identified people with disabilities as a group to receive special consideration in employment and other organizational areas. It requires employees doing business with the federal government and federal agencies to have an affirmative action program and to reasonably accommodate the employment of disabled persons. Americans with Disabilities Act, ADA, of 1990, applies to employers with 15 or more employees and identifies coverage for people with disabilities. It requires employers to provide access to public spaces for people with disabilities, like handicap bathrooms, handicap ramps, and the like. It requires employers to make necessary alterations to public accommodations and commercial facilities for accessibility by people with disabilities. Qualified disabled individual, defined by ADA, is someone with a disability who can perform the essential components of a job with or without reasonable accommodation. Reasonable accommodation means altering the usual ways of doing things so that an otherwise qualified disabled person can perform the essential job duties, but without creating an undue hardship for the employer. How about older workers? We have the Age Discrimination Act. It applies to employers with 20 or more employees, prohibits discrimination in employment for most individuals over 40. It has a mandatory retirement age clause that says it's illegal for most employees. In other words, we can't push you out the door if you're 62. Supervisors need to be aware that decisions to not promote, demote, or terminate older workers should be documented with some kind of sound, objective performance appraisal. Otherwise, they're subjected to a lawsuit. Older workers may reject them and resist changing their habits and learning new ways. Older workers may be able to compensate for declines in physical and mental abilities by using their experience. Older workers may view retirement with anxiety. Civil Rights Act and EEO requirements say that employers generally may not discriminate in employment practices because of an individual's religious belief. Thus, employers must make reasonable accommodations for employees with differing religious beliefs. They're obligated to prevent practices or actions by employees that might constitute a hostile environment for someone based. Now, know that in the case of Muslims, they have to be allowed to pray so many times a day, and thus provide them with the facility to do it and the time to do it. Supervisors also need to be aware that members of legally protected categories, both minorities and women, may experience resistance and resentment in their supervisory positions. Protected class employees may try to take advantage of like class supervisors, and protected group supervisors may feel greater pressure to perform their job. Protected group supervisors may communicate better with like class employees. Reverse discrimination. Kind of an interesting topic, but it's preference given to protected group members in hiring and promotion over the more qualified or more experienced workers from non-protected groups. It's not unlawful when a company and union negotiate a voluntary affirmative action program, and as long as it does not conflict with the ADA when older workers are offered better contract terms. Supervisors must adapt their ways of managing their departments to meet the considerations afforded to legally protected employees. Recognize that the best way to manage all employees in their department is to constantly apply the principles of good supervision. Understand that supervision of diversity should not be viewed as something extra or separate. Basically, treat everybody the same. So, we hope you enjoyed this part of managing diversity. I hope you've also looked at defining diversity. And be sure to look at our next presentation on EEOC topics. Thank you for viewing and have a great day.